What if the key to feeling happier instantly wasn't about changing your job, your relationship, or your entire life, but simply changing the way you communicate? In the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to use powerful, emotionally intelligent communication hacks that instantly lift your mood, deepen your relationships, and bring you peace, even in the most stressful conversations. This isn't about being fake positive, it's about getting real, clear, and connected. Let's unlock the kind of happiness that starts with your words. Most people go through life communicating with one core objective: to be understood, acknowledged, or validated. Conversations often become subtle power games where we're subconsciously asking, "Do you see me? Do you hear me? Am I enough?" And while that's human, it's also where so much of our emotional instability comes from, because when the goal of our communication is centered solely around being heard, the moment we feel ignored, misunderstood, or dismissed, our mood drops instantly. We start spiraling into overthinking, frustration, and resentment, not because of what was said, but because we didn't get the emotional outcome we were hoping for. But there's a mindset shift that instantly changes how communication affects your emotional state. Speaking to uplift, not just to be heard. It sounds simple, but it's profoundly powerful. When you intentionally choose words that leave people better than you found them, you're no longer dependent on their response to feel good. You're no longer waiting for someone else's reaction to determine your emotional state. Instead, you become the source of positivity. You become the thermostat, not the thermometer, of your environment. Start with the smallest interactions. Take your greeting, for example. Most people say, "Hey, how are you?" out of habit. But what if you added real warmth? What if your tone carried genuine interest or your words were laced with kindness? That tiny shift can make someone feel seen and, in turn, boost your mood too. The moment you make someone smile, there's a biochemical response in your brain. You feel lighter, more connected, more in control. It's not just about being nice, it's about reclaiming emotional agency. The same applies when you give compliments. Many people hold back from expressing admiration or positive thoughts about others because they fear it might make them seem vulnerable, needy, or awkward. But a genuine compliment, delivered without expectation, is one of the fastest ways to elevate a conversation and your own emotional vibration. When you say something like, "You always bring such great energy into this room," you're not only making that person's day, you're reinforcing a narrative that you are someone who spreads joy. And that belief about yourself becomes a mood booster that no one can take away from you. Listening is another underestimated tool in this approach. Most people think of listening as a passive act, but it's actually one of the most generous forms of communication. When you listen deeply, with eye contact, presence, and no urge to interrupt, you create space for others to relax, open up, and feel valued. And that emotional feedback loop is real. When they feel good around you, you start feeling good about yourself. The irony is that we often chase good moods by trying to be the most interesting person in the room, but the fastest way to feel powerful is to be the most interested person in the room. Think about the relationships in your life that bring you the most joy. Are they the ones where you're constantly proving yourself? Or are they the ones where conversations flow with ease, where you both feel seen, where kindness is exchanged without keeping score? Those relationships are built on the foundation of mutual emotional upliftment. When you adopt the habit of intentional uplifting communication, you start to attract more of that energy into your life, and slowly your social circle becomes one where joy is the norm, not the exception. Even during conflict, this mindset creates transformation. Instead of speaking to win or dominate, you speak to build bridges. You find words that express truth with compassion. You say things like, "I care about us and I want to understand where we went wrong," instead of launching into blame or criticism. That shift from ego-driven to value-driven communication doesn't just dissolve arguments, it raises your emotional standard. You begin to see yourself as someone who protects peace instead of perpetuating chaos. Another powerful layer to this is understanding that you don't have to agree with someone to uplift them. Even when you disagree, even when you feel hurt or misunderstood, you can still choose words that preserve your integrity. You can say, I don't see it the same way, but I appreciate your honesty. Or, this is tough for me, but I respect where you're coming from. Those sentences carry weight. They elevate the conversation without suppressing your own truth. And in doing so, they keep your emotional dignity intact. When you train your mind to focus on how your words impact others, rather than how others' words impact you, you step into emotional leadership. You no longer walk into rooms wondering, will they like me? Instead, you walk in asking, how can I bring light into this space? That change in focus is everything, because happiness is not found in being the center of attention. It's found in the moments when you realize you don't need attention to feel fulfilled. You've already created the energy you were hoping someone else would give you. Even when you're dealing with negativity, this principle applies. You might encounter someone who is rude, dismissive, or in a bad mood. Your instinct might be to mirror that energy, to defend, withdraw, or retaliate, but if instead you responded with warmth, not fake positivity, but calm, grounded kindness, a smile, a pause before reacting, a soft but firm boundary. That response doesn't just disarm the other person, it stabilizes you. You've just proved to yourself that their behavior doesn't dictate your emotional world. And that is one of the most empowering realizations a person can have. This shift in communication style also has a long-term impact on self-worth. The more you practice speaking to uplift others, the more you begin to view yourself as someone who brings value wherever you go. And over time, that identity becomes your emotional baseline. You walk taller, you speak with more clarity, you recover from stress faster. Why? Because you've stopped relying on external validation to feel good. Your self-worth is now tied to contribution, not approval. It's easy to dismiss this as overly idealistic, especially when you're going through difficult seasons. But that's exactly when this practice becomes most important. On your lowest days, when nothing seems to be going right, uplifting someone else through your words can spark a light you didn't know you still had. It might be a text to a friend, a thank you to a colleague, or a kind word to a stranger. Those small actions, repeated consistently, rewire your brain to seek connection over control and presence over perfection. There is a deep peace that comes when you realize your mood is no longer held hostage by how others treat you, respond to you, or interpret you. You've taken the power back because now your words are no longer a plea for recognition. They are instruments of contribution. And every time you use them to elevate someone else, you're not just lifting them, you're lifting yourself. When communication becomes reactive, emotions tend to lead the conversation. Words are thrown like weapons. Tone sharpens. Patience shortens. The result is predictable: regret, misunderstandings, and emotional exhaustion. This cycle is not only destructive in relationships, but it also robs the person reacting of their own peace. The way out is a shift from reactive to reflective communication. This shift doesn't mean silencing emotions. It means understanding them before expressing them. It's about replacing knee-jerk responses with thoughtful clarity that protects your emotional well-being while building stronger connections with others. In any emotionally charged moment, there's a split second, a space between what happens and how you respond. That space is often overlooked, but it holds power. It's the difference between escalation and resolution, between anger and empathy. Learning to recognize and expand that space is the foundation of reflective communication. Instead of reacting out of habit, pain, or ego, you give yourself permission to pause. That pause isn't weakness, it's restraint. And restraint is a strength rooted in self-awareness. People often believe they're either calm or not, patient or not, emotionally intelligent or not. But these aren't fixed traits, they're skills. They're choices made in hundreds of small moments. When someone interrupts you, you can snap or you can breathe. When someone criticizes you unfairly, you can lash out, or you can ask, what are they really trying to say? That question shifts the narrative from one of defensiveness to curiosity. And curiosity is an emotional cushion. It softens your instinct to attack or withdraw and helps you stay grounded. Reflective communication starts with one core habit: slowing down. In conversations that stir emotional discomfort, slowing down gives your nervous system time to regulate. A fast heart rate, tense shoulders, or a flushed face are all signals that your body is preparing for defense. Instead of charging forward, ask yourself silently, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling it? What outcome do I want from this conversation? These internal questions create space between stimulus and response. In that space, emotions can be processed, not projected. One of the main causes of reactive behavior is feeling misunderstood. The pain of not being heard or validated can ignite frustration. But when you switch to reflective communication, your goal shifts from being right to being clear. Clarity is powerful. Instead of saying, "You never listen to me," which sounds accusatory, you might say, "When I share something and feel ignored, I get hurt." The second version reveals vulnerability rather than throwing blame. It invites connection instead of confrontation. It doesn't dilute your truth, it delivers it in a way that someone else can receive. Reflective communication also involves giving others the same grace you give yourself. Everyone has moments where they say the wrong thing, raise their voice, or speak from a place of fear. When you choose to reflect instead of react, you create emotional safety, not just for yourself, but for them too. You allow room for correction, for apology, for understanding. That kind of space isn't just kind, it's transformative. It turns emotionally charged situations into opportunities for growth and deeper understanding. There's also a biological layer to this. Reactivity is often driven by the brain's amygdala, the part responsible for fight or flight. It's designed to protect, but in modern relationships, it often overreacts. Reflective communication engages the prefrontal cortex, the rational part of the brain. It asks you to think beyond the moment. Will saying this help or hurt? Will this tone resolve anything? Am I speaking to express or to attack? Asking these questions strengthens the mental pathways responsible for emotional regulation. Over time, reflection becomes the new default. Another piece of this practice is learning to sit with discomfort. Sometimes you won't get the resolution you want immediately. The other person may not respond the way you hoped, but by choosing reflection, you maintain your own integrity. You get to leave the conversation knowing you didn't lower your standards just to match someone else's chaos. That feeling, that inner alignment, is often more satisfying than a temporary emotional victory. It's also worth noting that reflection doesn't mean avoiding confrontation. In fact, some of the most honest conversations are rooted in reflection. It means expressing what needs to be said without allowing emotion to cloud the message. It means saying, "I value this relationship too much to pretend everything's okay," instead of bottling things up until resentment takes over. It's the difference between passive silence and assertive honesty. The goal is not to avoid conflict, it's to approach it with clarity and care. Over time, practicing this kind of communication creates emotional resilience. You begin to trust yourself in tense moments. You stop fearing conflict because you know you can handle it with grace. You're no longer a hostage to other people's moods or words. You've built a space within yourself that's calm, clear, and unshakable. That internal stability doesn't just affect how you communicate, it changes how you feel every day. It reduces anxiety, increases confidence, and deepens your connection with others. This approach also makes you a better listener. When you're not preparing to defend or retaliate, you're actually able to hear what the other person is saying. Often, beneath anger is sadness. Beneath aggression is fear. When you listen from a place of reflection, you become attuned to those subtleties. You might hear a friend's sarcasm and realize it's coming from insecurity. You might hear a partner's criticism and realize it's a cry for closeness. That insight allows you to respond with empathy, not ego. In work environments, reflective communication diffuses tension and boosts collaboration. Instead of reacting to a colleague's blunt comment, with equal bluntness, you might ask, "Can you help me understand what you meant by that?" That question opens a dialogue instead of closing it. It signals maturity. It shows leadership, not through dominance, but through emotional clarity. The same applies in family dynamics, where old triggers often run deep. Choosing to respond reflectively, especially with loved ones, can interrupt patterns that have been running for years. Ultimately, moving from reactive to reflective communication isn't about perfection. You'll still have moments when emotion gets the best of you, but with practice, those moments become fewer, and more importantly, they become learning moments, not sources of shame. You begin to notice your own growth. You speak differently. You listen differently. You even breathe differently in tense situations. And people around you notice too. They feel safer, more respected, and more open in your presence. This transformation doesn't just change your conversations, it changes your energy. You start each day with a little more peace, knowing you don't have to control others to feel good. You only need to master your response. That shift rewires your emotional foundation from chaos to calm, from insecurity to intention. And every time you choose reflection over reaction, you're building a life rooted in emotional strength, personal freedom, and genuine happiness. Expectations are one of the most silent yet destructive forces in communication. They operate in the background of relationships, friendships, and everyday conversations, quietly building pressure until something cracks. When unspoken expectations aren't met, whether it's a response we hoped for, a gesture we thought someone should have known to make, or a certain tone we expected, we experience disappointment, frustration, and often unnecessary emotional pain. The irony is that the expectations we carry are often invisible to the very people we impose them on. And so, without realizing it, we end up sabotaging our own mood. There's a mindset shift that dissolves this tension instantly, choosing appreciation over expectation. This isn't about lowering standards or settling for less. It's about recognizing that no one is obligated to meet the invisible checklist we've created in our minds. Every relationship, whether personal or professional, functions better when appreciation is the primary language spoken. The moment you move from asking, "Why didn't they do this?" to saying, "I appreciate what they already bring," you create space for gratitude, and with gratitude comes peace. Most conflicts and emotional dips in relationships can be traced back to some form of unmet expectation, a text that didn't come, a tone that felt off, a milestone that wasn't celebrated the way we wanted. And rather than express these feelings directly, people often turn to passive aggressiveness, withdrawal, or cold silence. The message becomes, "You failed me," even if those words are never spoken. But if we pause and ask ourselves what we're truly feeling, it's rarely about the actual event. It's about the story we've attached to it. We didn't just want to reply to a message, we wanted to feel prioritized. We didn't just want help with something, we wanted to feel supported. Understanding that difference is key. When you begin to shift your communication from expectation to appreciation, you naturally start expressing what you value in others more often. You tell someone, "Thank you for listening to me today," instead of silently assuming they always should. You say, "I really admire the way you handled that situation," instead of keeping your praise locked away because you think they already know. These small affirmations build emotional equity. They make people feel seen, and that in turn strengthens bonds and boosts the mood of everyone involved, including your own. Appreciation is a mirror. When you reflect it outward, it reflects back to you. The more you practice it, and the more you start to see what's right rather than what's missing. You train your mind to focus on abundance rather than scarcity. Instead of obsessing over the one message that was delayed, you remember the consistent kindness that person has shown you over time. Instead of stewing over one oversight, you remember the countless times they showed up when it mattered. That shift doesn't make you blind, it makes you balanced. You still notice what needs to improve, but you address it from a place of gratitude, not resentment. It's important to understand that many expectations are inherited or socially conditioned. From movies, culture, or past relationships, people learn what should happen in different scenarios. But real relationships, especially those grounded in mutual respect and connection, thrive when they're custom-built, not based on old scripts. Communicating appreciation allows you to co-create those dynamics intentionally. You let go of the belief that the other person has to read your mind and instead offer them the roadmap with clarity and kindness. There's also an internal benefit to this practice. Living with high, rigid expectations creates a constant low-level tension. It primes you for disappointment. You start to anticipate being let down. That expectation becomes a filter through which you interpret others' behavior, even when it's innocent or unintentional. But when you anchor your communication in appreciation, that tension dissolves. You stop bracing for disappointment and begin leaning into what's already working. This doesn't mean avoiding hard conversations. It means having them with a tone that honors the relationship instead of punishing it. Imagine the emotional difference between these two statements. I'm upset because you didn't do what I expected, versus I appreciate you being there for me most of the time, and I wanted to share what I was hoping for in this moment. One is charged with blame, the other is wrapped in grace. One creates defensiveness, the other invites understanding, and the result, your mood doesn't spiral. The connection stays intact, and the issue actually gets resolved rather than buried under tension. Appreciation also invites reciprocity. When someone feels genuinely appreciated, they're more likely to show up, not out of obligation, but out of desire. It nurtures willingness instead of resistance. In teams, it boosts morale. In romantic relationships, it deepens intimacy. In friendships, it fosters reliability. And the best part? You never have to manipulate, guilt, or push. Appreciation makes people want to give their best. Another layer of this approach is expressing appreciation even during miscommunication or conflict. It may sound counterintuitive, but it's powerful. Saying, I know we're both upset right now, but I still value you and want us to figure this out, can disarm defensiveness instantly. It reminds the other person that your connection matters more than the disagreement. That one sentence can keep an argument from turning into a rupture. It keeps you emotionally anchored even in the storm. It's also important to apply this mindset inward. Many people are harder on themselves than they are on anyone else. They carry expectations of perfection, constant productivity, or endless patience. And when they fall short, they spiral into guilt or self-criticism. But just as external communication flourishes with appreciation, so does self-talk. Instead of saying, I should have done more, you say, I did what I could today, and that's enough. Instead of fixating on what went wrong, you notice what you handled well. That shift from inner expectation to self-appreciation builds resilience, confidence, and emotional stability. Living in a state of appreciation doesn't mean ignoring problems or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It means approaching communication with the belief that people are doing the best they can with what they know. It means expressing gratitude for the effort before pointing out the gaps. And it means understanding that happiness isn't something we wait for others to deliver. It's something we actively create with the words we choose. When appreciation becomes your default setting, your world feels lighter. Conversations carry less pressure. Relationships feel less like tests and more like collaborations. Your emotional energy is no longer drained by what others fail to do. Instead, it's fueled by your ability to recognize the good, express it clearly, and invite more of it into your life. That shift, one sentence, one moment, one act of recognition at a time, becomes a daily practice of choosing joy over judgment, connection over criticism, and presence over perfection. There's a common misunderstanding that in order to be emotionally strong, one must always appear unaffected, composed, and relentlessly positive. The truth, however, is much more nuanced. Real emotional strength, the kind that actually boosts your mood and fosters deeper, healthier communication, is rooted in emotional honesty. It's not about always being cheerful or having the perfect comeback. It's about being real with yourself and others. When you learn to express what you're genuinely feeling without guilt or apology, you not only lighten your emotional load, but also build authentic connections that become a source of lasting happiness. Emotional honesty starts with self-awareness. It's the ability to pause in a moment and recognize what's actually going on inside you. Many people walk around with bottled up emotions, frustration, sadness, anxiety, because they've been taught that expressing those feelings is a sign of weakness. Over time, those unspoken emotions weigh heavily, affecting everything from body language to tone of voice, and even the way we interpret other people's words. By learning to name and acknowledge those feelings, you begin to free yourself from the pressure of pretending everything is fine when it's not. One of the most immediate benefits of emotional honesty is the release it brings. Saying, "I'm overwhelmed today," or "I'm not okay right now," might seem small, but it has a massive impact on your internal state. Suppressing emotions requires energy, mental and physical. It creates tension in the body and static in the mind. But the moment you say the truth out loud, it's like unclenching a fist you didn't even realize you were making. It doesn't fix everything, but it creates space to breathe and recalibrate. Emotional honesty also enhances communication because it removes the need for people to guess how you're feeling. When you express yourself clearly and calmly, you eliminate confusion. People don't have to interpret your silence, your sarcasm, or your sudden withdrawal. You're giving them a clear picture, which helps avoid misinterpretations and unnecessary tension. This clarity builds trust. It tells the other person, "You don't have to read between the lines with me. I'll tell you what's real." There's a misconception that being emotionally honest will make others uncomfortable, but the opposite is often true. Vulnerability creates a safe space. When someone sees you expressing your truth with composure and self-respect, it gives them permission to do the same. You're modeling a healthier way to be, and in doing so, you deepen the quality of your connections. People feel more seen, more understood, and more at ease. And when the people around you feel emotionally safe, your environment becomes more peaceful, more supportive, and naturally, your mood improves. Of course, there's a difference between being emotionally honest and emotionally impulsive. Emotional honesty doesn't mean unloading your frustrations the moment they surface. It means taking a breath, understanding the feeling, and then expressing it constructively. For example, instead of snapping, "You never support me," emotional honesty might sound like, "I've been feeling a bit alone lately, and I'd love more support if you have the space." One version blames, the other reveals. One creates defensiveness, the other invites empathy, and the emotional outcome is vastly different. Another key element of this practice is expressing your needs clearly. Many people expect others to know what they want without having to say it, but hoping someone will guess your needs is a fast track to disappointment. Emotional honesty means saying, "I need a break," or "Can we talk about this later when I'm in a better headspace?" It means being upfront about boundaries, about the kind of support you need, and about what's too much for you. It doesn't make you demanding, it makes you self-respecting. And when you respect your own emotional bandwidth, you naturally preserve your energy and boost your mood. There's also a quiet kind of power in expressing joy honestly. Sometimes people hold back their excitement, their love, their admiration because they fear looking too eager or vulnerable. But emotional honesty includes the good stuff too. Telling someone, "I really enjoyed our conversation," or "Being around you makes me feel calm," isn't cheesy, it's human. Sharing those genuine moments of appreciation creates a ripple effect of positivity. It strengthens bonds and reminds you of what's good in your world. And when you reflect on those interactions later, your brain relives the emotional lift they gave you. Emotional honesty is especially critical during tough conversations. It's easy to hide behind sarcasm, detachment, or emotional shutdown. But true peace comes from expressing the truth kindly. Saying something like, "This topic is difficult for me to talk about, but I want to try," or "I'm hurt by what happened and I'd like to understand it better," opens the door to healing. It takes courage, but it also brings relief. You're no longer pretending or protesting others at the expense of your own emotional truth. You're speaking from a place of self-honor. It's important to remember that emotional honesty is a practice, not a one-time event. Some days you'll get it right. Other days you might hold back out of fear or habit. But every time you choose to be just a little more real, you make progress. You teach yourself that your emotions are not problems to fix, but signals to listen to. And as you get better at listening, your communication becomes lighter, more authentic, and far more fulfilling. This practice also helps break toxic patterns. When you're not honest about how you feel, resentment builds. You start resenting your partner, your friend, your colleague, not necessarily because they're doing something wrong, but because you haven't spoken your truth. That internal friction creates stress and disconnection. But when you learn to express discomfort early and clearly, issues don't have time to fester. They get addressed while they're small, manageable, and easier to resolve. Finally, emotional honesty builds self-trust. Every time you speak your truth, whether it's a boundary, a need, or a feeling, you prove to yourself that you can count on your own voice. That kind of trust is priceless. It makes you less reactive to criticism and more grounded in who you are. It gives you the emotional freedom to show up fully, whether things are going well or falling apart. Because at the end of the day, the most consistent source of happiness isn't found in circumstances or even other people. It's found in knowing that you are living in alignment with your truth, not a performance, not a filtered version, but the real, raw, beautiful version of who you are.